We didn't plan to start this story with a revelation or a confrontation. What stayed with us was something smaller, a pause that lasted too long, a moment where nothing dramatic happened, yet everything had already shifted. Irene Foster's story begins there, in the space where help slowly turned into control. This is how she remembers it. I didn't cry at the funeral. People noticed. My mother leaned close and whispered, "You're in shock. That's normal." I nodded because it was easier than explaining that I'd already run out of tears the night my husband died, 1 month after our son was born. Cole slept through most of it. That felt wrong, somehow. Everyone else kept saying his name softly, like it might wake him. I wanted him to sleep forever in that moment. Afterward, my mother took my purse from my hand. "Let me hold that. You shouldn't worry about things like this right now." I watched her tuck it under her arm. I didn't ask for it back. My father was overseas. Another trip. Another apology sent through a crackling call. "I'll be back soon. Your mother's there. She'll take care of you." She smiled when I told her that. You see, we'll manage everything together. Together turned into her opening my mail. Together turned into her answering my phone. Together turned into me being told, "Just rest. I'll handle it." One night, I asked, "Can I see the paperwork Dad mentioned about the house?" She didn't look up from the sink. Later. "You don't need that stress." The next morning, my brother's boxes were in the hallway. "Brian needs space," she said. "You're flexible." I stood there holding Cole, listening to the sound of something being taken without anyone asking. From the outside, it didn't look like a fight yet. That's often how it starts. If this moment feels familiar to you, stay with the story. The house felt busy in a way that didn't belong to me. My mother started arriving early, sometimes before I'd finished feeding Cole. She'd set her bag down, wash her hands, and move through the kitchen like she still lived there. "I'll take him," she'd say, already reaching. "You look exhausted." I let her. I always did. Mail disappeared from the counter. When my phone rang, she'd glance at the screen and say, "Probably spam," and set it face down. At night, she asked gentle questions that didn't feel gentle at all. "Did you pay the electric bill yet?" I thought Dad was handling. "He's traveling. Someone has to be responsible." One afternoon, I mentioned my father's call. He said something about paperwork, for the house. She didn't turn around, just kept rinsing a bottle. "We'll get to it. You don't need to worry about that right now." Later turned into days. Days turned into silence. When my brother showed up with 2 suitcases, I stood there holding Cole while my mother explained it like a solved problem. "Brian needs stability. Just for a while." She paused, then added, "You're adaptable." He smiled like this was already settled. That was the first moment my chest tightened. Not panic. Something slower. We remember noticing how quiet she got then. Not defensive, just smaller. That night, my mother left an envelope on the table, a little cash inside. "For groceries," she said, "until things settle." I watched her slide the envelope toward me, like a favor. Nothing had been taken yet, but nothing felt like mine anymore. Brian didn't knock when he came back the next time. The door opened, voices followed, and suddenly his shoes were by the wall like they'd always been there. He dropped onto the couch and stretched out, just crashing for a bit. He said, "Mom said it was fine." My mother stood behind him, arms folded, already prepared. "He needs room to breathe." "You understand that." I shifted Cole higher on my shoulder. He'd started to fuss, small, restless sounds against my collarbone. For how long, I asked. Brian shrugged. "Couple weeks, maybe longer. Depends." My mother stepped in before I could say anything else. "You don't really need all this space right now. You're barely home." I opened my mouth, then closed it. The words felt heavy. Slow. A few days later, the locks were changed. She explained it over the phone, like a favor. Brian misplaced his keys. This is easier. That evening, she pressed another envelope into my hand. Thicker this time. Rent help, she said. Until you figure things out. My chest burned. Not anger yet. Something closer to embarrassment. We noticed how she didn't argue, how she adjusted her grip on the baby instead. That night, I packed a bag. Just clothes for Cole and me. No furniture. No photos. Brian didn't look up from his phone as I passed. Text me when you're settled, he said. Mom worries. I stepped outside with the bag cutting into my wrist, and for the first time, I didn't know where I belonged. The leasing office smelled like carpet cleaner and coffee that had been sitting too long. I stood by the wall, rocking Cole in his carrier while a woman behind the desk flipped through papers. She glanced up once, then back down. We've got a one-bedroom opening next month, she said. Second floor. No elevator. I nodded like that was fine. She slid a clipboard toward me. Proof of income. My fingers hovered. I felt the heat rise in my face. I have some support right now. I said, temporary. She paused, just long enough to register it, then wrote something down. Cole started to cry. Not loud. Tired. I bounced gently, whispering his name until his body softened again. We noticed how she didn't look angry here. Just careful, like she was trying not to take up too much space. When I stepped back outside, the air felt sharper. I leaned against the brick wall and checked my phone. A message from my mother waited. Did you see the place? Don't rush. Brian needs stability right now. I didn't reply. I stood there longer than I meant to, watching cars pull in and out, holding my son and telling myself this was temporary. My phone rang while I was sitting on the curb outside the leasing office. Cole asleep against my chest. Hey! My father's voice came through, thinner than I remembered. I'm back in town. I told him where I was without thinking. It felt easier than explaining later. He pulled up 20 minutes after that, parked, got out, stood there looking at me like he'd missed a step somewhere. This isn't where you live, he said. I shrugged. Small. Not right now. He glanced at the building, then back at Cole, reached out, touched his foot through the blanket. He's bigger. I nodded again. We walked a few steps together. No rush. He finally stopped. Irene, why aren't you in the house I bought for you? The words landed wrong. Not angry. Just confused. Like he was asking about a receipt. I tried to answer. My mouth opened, closed. The sound that came out surprised me. Mom said Brian needed space. He stared at me. And you. I felt my throat tighten. She said renting was fine. For now. We watched him process that. The pause stretched. We could hear the moment when something shifted for him, even before he spoke again. He exhaled slowly. Come with me. I hesitated. To where? To see it, he said. The house. I adjusted Cole's blanket, stood up. My legs felt unsteady, like I'd been sitting too long in one place. As we walked toward his car, he didn't raise his voice, didn't say anything sharp. That scared me more than if he had. We didn't go inside the house right away. My father stopped on the sidewalk and looked at the windows, like he was checking something he couldn't see from the street. Did your mother give you the documents he asked? I shifted Cole to my other arm. What documents he turned to me then? Fully, the trust. The one I set up for you and the baby. I felt my stomach drop. I don't know what you're talking about. His face changed, not dramatically. Just quieter. I transferred $350,000 into a living trust. It was meant to cover housing, care, whatever you needed. The words sat between us. Heavy. Unreal. She never mentioned it. I said. My voice sounded far away to me. She just said things were handled. He nodded once, took out his phone, stepped a few feet away and made a call I couldn't hear. We noticed how he didn't look angry yet, just focused, like a man lining up facts. That night, We sat at a small table in a quiet office. A man with tired eyes and a calm voice slid papers across the surface. Funds were accessed in increments. He said, "Credit cards, entertainment expenses, transfers tied to your brother." I stared at the page. The numbers blurred. My father closed the folder. She was never authorized to use it this way. I held Cole closer. His breathing was warm against my neck. "So, none of that money was for us?" I asked. My father didn't hesitate. "No, it was always yours." He stood, rested a hand on my shoulder. "This stops now." I believed him, not because of the money, because of how steady his voice was when he said it. The music hit us before the door fully opened. Loud, bass-heavy. Someone laughed inside, sharp and careless. My father stopped short, keys still in his hand. "This isn't," he started, then went quiet. We stepped in. The smell of alcohol and something fried hung in the air. Shoes everywhere. Strangers on my couch. Brian stood near the kitchen island, a drink in his hand, smiling like this was his place. He spotted us and lifted the glass. "Hey, didn't expect you." My mother came out from the hallway, already frowning. "What are you doing here?" Her eyes went straight to my father. "You didn't call." He looked around once more. The living room, the walls, the space that was supposed to hold a crib. "Everyone out," he said. Calm, flat. Brian laughed. "Relax. It's just friends." My father didn't raise his voice. Now. People started grabbing jackets. Someone muttered an apology. The door closed behind the last of them, and the house finally went quiet. My mother crossed her arms. Brian needed support. Irene wouldn't have managed this place anyway. I felt my chest tighten. I adjusted Cole's blanket and spoke before I could stop myself. "You didn't take my house. You took the month after my husband died." Silence. We noticed how no one rushed to interrupt her this time. Brian looked down. My mother stared at the wall. My father stepped forward. "This ends today." He turned to me then. "You won't sleep another night wondering where you belong." I believed him. Not because the house was quiet again, but because, for the first time, it felt like it was listening. Things didn't explode after that night. They thinned out. My father made calls. Quiet ones. He didn't include me in most of them. Just told me when to show up, when to sign, when to breathe. My mother stopped texting. Brian sent one message late one night. Didn't know it would go this far. I didn't answer. We sat together at a long table in an office that smelled faintly of paper and coffee. A man slid documents toward my father, then toward me. "Trust administration has been reassigned," he said. "Funds will be restored. The property will be vacated." I signed where I was told. My hand shook once, then steadied. Outside, my father rested his hand on the roof of his car. "You don't owe anyone an explanation," he said. "Not anymore." We noticed how she nodded instead of speaking, how her shoulders dropped a little. That afternoon, the house was empty. No music, no voices, just rooms that echoed. I stood in the doorway holding Cole, listening to the quiet settle in. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like space. The new place didn't echo. That was the first thing I noticed. Cole slept in the next room, his door half open, the soft hum of the monitor steady and low. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, shoes kicked off, my phone face down beside me. My father helped set things up, then left again. Another trip. At the door he paused, keys in hand. "I should have been here sooner," he said. I looked at him and felt the truth of it without letting it take over. "You're here now. That matters." He nodded once, like he was accepting terms instead of forgiveness. The monthly transfers came quietly, enough to cover the basics. Rent, childcare, the space to breathe. No speeches attached, no reminders of where it came from. My mother called once. I watched it ring until it stopped. At night, when the apartment went still, I caught myself waiting for instructions that never came. Then I'd remember there weren't any anymore. I started doing small things without asking, buying groceries without checking the total twice, hanging pictures, leaving dishes for the morning. Cole learned to laugh in this place. A real laugh, sudden and loud, sitting there on the floor. I realized something simple. Irene Foster didn't lose her family and find a replacement. She lost the version of herself that thought she had to earn permission to live. That part didn't come back. And I didn't miss it. If this story stayed with you longer than you expected, you already know why.